Welcome to JSOU's Meet the Fellows. I'm Dr. Mark Regerzewski, and today I'm speaking with JSOU non-resident fellow, Mr. Chris Cruden. Chris, welcome, and thank you for taking the time for us today.
Thank you.
Let's get right to our conversation and let the world know who Chris Cruden is and why he was selected for this important fellowship. So Chris, can you please introduce yourself and provide a little insight into your background?
Sure. My name is Christopher Cruden. I'm a former case officer, which for those of you who don't know, it's an intel officer who primarily focuses on human intelligence. But before I got into the intelligence business, I received a master's from University of St. Andrews in Scotland in international relations and Middle Eastern studies. After that, I moved to Yemen to learn Arabic because I wanted to better understand how I could contribute to the war on terror. Learned a lot of Arabic, and since then I've lost a lot of Arabic. After I moved back from Yemen, I went to Georgetown University, received a master's in security studies. But throughout my entire life, I've been a people person, which kind of drew me into focus on human intelligence. While at Georgetown, I was recruited into something called the MICEP program, Military Intelligence Civilian Accepted Career Program. They take civilians and then they turn them into intel officers. After that, I went to the Army Operations Group, did a bunch of different human intelligence training before ultimately transferring to the Defense Intelligence Agency in the Special Operations Division. I was there for roughly 7 years in my career in the IC. I loved every minute of it. I had a great time. I love my colleagues. It was incredible. But in 2016, I felt like I wanted to change. So I went and worked at a small technology firm, primarily focused on defense tech. And then I ended up at a very large tech firm servicing national security leaders who want to implement larger technology solutions across the enterprise. After that, I mean, that was a great shift. It was a lot to learn, but the call back to mission really pulled at me, and I ended up back in the Pentagon, actually, in a front office, working as a senior advisor for the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. He's the guy who's, depending on what day of the week it is, and who's at the Pentagon, is the third, most powerful guy at the Pentagon. So I like to say that I speak fluent Pentagonese, but I have really deep ties back to the field by virtue of the fact that all my peers are still in the field, mostly supporting the SOF community.
That's a fascinating path to get here, especially the part about living in Yemen. That's pretty wild.
You can never do it again now. Those days
I'll have to find out more about that one day.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
So can you tell us how you've supported SOF in the past?
Sure. Basically, my entire career in the intelligence community was spent supporting SOF. When I was an intel officer or a case officer at DIA in the Special Operations Division, that's all I did was support SOF missions. And it could have been finding bad guys, in Afghanistan or Iraq, recruiting sources to figure out bed down locations so that the teams could go and, do their missions. Or most recently, when I was at the Pentagon, ensuring that those reports from the field landed on the right desks on the E-ring to ensure that the SOF community was getting the right resources they needed to carry out their mission. I did 3 deployments supporting SOF, 1 to Basra, Iraq, and then 2 to Afghanistan. They're hard times, but great people, and definitely some of the most rewarding experiences of my life and best friends that I've ever made. And all of that was within, supporting the SOF community.
So Chris, you are helping to support the Strategic Intelligence and Emerging Technology Department. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're so passionate about intelligence and technology?
Yes. Intelligence, over my career, what I've observed is intelligence is the lifeblood of national security, right? It could be satellites in the sky, looking down and giving the right information to people who are leaders who are making the right decisions for troop movements or for larger decisions than that. Or it could be notebooks in the field for your tactical human collector, getting information about where a certain location of a person or a thing is. Decision makers need accurate information to make these informed decisions, right? And I didn't really understand how important that was until I got into the intelligence community and and I didn't even understand it then in my early days until I got to USDI to see the scope of the information and the type of information that contributes to these intelligence products, right? So I really believe to my core that intel is key for securing our nation. And the technology component of it, technology is never going away. Technology is never going to be slower than it is right now. There's always going to be an innovation. There's always going to be something new that's discovered. There's going to be some cool gadget or incredible technology like quantum computing that's going to change the way that we either conduct war or the way that we prevent war. And that's why I'm really passionate, given my time in the field, as well as my time at more the policy, the strategic level of contributing to intel and emerging technology.
Yeah, I completely agree about the intelligence. You need that to better inform the policymakers to make better decisions. So we thank you for that contribution.
You have to.
So can you tell us, speaking about contributions, can you tell us a little bit about what you hope to contribute to JSOU?
Sure. I believe I'm rare in that I've seen the problem set from a lot of different areas. Like I've seen it from the private sector, I've seen it from the field, and I've seen it from the policy level. And I'm really looking forward to working with JSOU to leverage my expertise in intel and practical knowledge of technology for JSOU research and writings. I've also, attended 2 JSOU courses when I was at USDI. So I understand kind of the curriculum and a couple of the courses that have been taught. And it really excited me to see how those could be updated, made more relevant as we move from, the CT world to one of great power competition, strategic competition, whatever we want to call it today. And most importantly, I'm looking forward to injecting some energy, some enthusiasm into my peer group and to anyone I can to let them understand that, these things are important and we need thought leaders educated at the very beginning of their careers so they can take that knowledge throughout their careers and we don't end up having to play catch up as more interesting trends in intelligence happen or more emerging technologies pop up. We need to be ready for that and we need to have soft leadership that's ready for that as well.
Speaking of future leaders, what advice do you think you would have for the future soft leaders?
Keep an open mind. We train by doctrine, right? That doesn't mean that that's the only thing we should think about. There's going to be solutions out there that aren't in a joint pub, right? There's going to be a line of thought that you may not consider immediately because you weren't trained to do that. So keep an open mind about how you're making the decisions and take as much information as you can in before you make those decisions. And part of that, be imaginative, right? The military leaders, the ultimately successful military leaders, not the ones who do everything by the book. They think about it, they use their imagination, and they use that to win. And as part of that, keep abreast of new trends in technology. As I said before, tech's never going away unless all tech goes away, right? And we don't want that because that means the end of civilization. one thing I saw in the IC was that there's a tendency, especially amongst people who are locked in skiffs. I call them skiff islands. They have a tendency to focus on the information that they're fed on a system that other people don't get. And they don't think about all of the information the rest of the world is getting, right? So the more that you can step off the skiff island and absorb, the polished classified intel, but as well as what's going on in the world around you, that's extremely important, because the world moves faster outside of the skiff than it does in the skiff. So those are some tips some thoughts I have about that.
That's great. I agree with all of that. It's fantastic. I have one bonus question for you. I want the world to really know Chris Cruden here. Why don't you tell us who your favorite college football team is and why?
University of Alabama, Roll Tide. And the reason is my grandfather played for Alabama. So I grew up as a huge Alabama fan, and I grew up in Alabama. And if anyone knows anything about Alabama, you're either an Auburn or an Alabama fan. And either one, you have to be a huge supporter. So I watch every game, and my wife's a big Bama fan too. And we actually host games at the house for people who we're trying to indoctrinate into University of Alabama football.
So I thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. I look forward to your continued research efforts, and I thank you again for speaking with me.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to working with you.